Goal orientation is of disposition toward developing or demonstrating ability in achievement situations. Previous research has examined goal orientation as a motivation variable useful for recruitment, climate and culture, performance appraisal, and selection. Studies have also used goal orientation to predict sales performance, goal setting, learning and adaptive behaviors in training and leadership. Due to the many theoretical and practical applications of goal orientation, it is important to understand the construct and how it relates to other variables. In this entry, goal orientation will be reviewed in terms of its history, stability, dimensionality, antecedents, its relationship to goal setting and consequences, its relevance to motivation, and future directions for research. Historical perspective. Early conceptualizations. The earliest conceptualizations of goal orientation were proposed in the 1970s by the educational psychologist J.A. Eisen. Eisen argued that students who approached college as an opportunity to acquire new skills and knowledge possessed a learning orientation, while students who approached college with the goal to exclusively obtain high grades possessed a grade orientation. Eisen originally believed that these two orientations were two ends of the same continuum and developed the learning orientation grade orientation scale to measure the continuum. At about the same time, J.G. Nichols was developing a related theory that achievement motivation would lead grade school children to set high task-related goals. Nichols found that when some high-ability children encountered difficult tasks, they would use maladaptive strategies, leading to eventual feelings of helplessness, while others would use more productive coping strategies. Nichols later conceptualized these differences as two types of achievement goals: task involvement, where individuals seek to develop their competence relative to their own abilities, and ego involvement, where individuals seek to develop their competence relative to the abilities of others. Nichols's early work set up Dweck's proposition of two types of goal orientation: learning orientation and performance orientation. Dweck postulated that children with learning goals were believed to approach situations with the goal to master the acquisition of new skills, while children with performance goals were believed to approach situations with the goal of gaining approval from peers and teachers. Similar to Eisen, Dweck conceptualized goal orientation as a two-dimension construct. Individuals with a learning goal orientation seek to develop their competence by acquiring new skills and mastering new situations. They are not concerned about their performance relative to others, but rather with furthering their understanding of a given topic or task. Individuals with a performance goal orientation seek to demonstrate and validate the adequacy of their competence in order to receive favorable judgments and avoid negative judgments. Although Dweck's work in this area built on the foundation laid by Nichols, the fundamental difference between the two scholars' works was the attribution of an individual's goal orientation. Nichols believed that the goal orientation held by an individual was a result of the possession of either an internal or external referent, while Dweck considered the adoption of a particular goal orientation to be related to the theory of intelligence held by that individual. Subsequent work by Eisen and colleagues in 1982 led to a change in the conceptualization of these orientations from two ends of a continuum to two separate constructs. More recently, researchers have embraced the idea that individuals can adopt the two orientation styles simultaneously. Persons can be high in both learning and performance orientations, low in both learning and performance orientations, or high in one orientation and low in the other. Ultimately, individuals can entertain multiple competing goal orientations at the same time, striving to both outperform competitors and improve their own performance. This led to the conceptualization of two separate continuums, one for learning goal orientation and one for performance goal orientation. Recent conceptualizations, just over a decade after Dweck conceptualized the two-factor model of goal orientation, Van Waal proposed that goal orientation is better conceptualized as a three-factor model, further dividing performance goal orientation into the dimensions of avoidant performance goal orientation and proof performance goal orientation. APGO is centered on the goal of avoiding failure and negative judgment from others centered on lack of competence, while PPGO is centered on demonstrating performance to prove competence. Learning goal orientation has also been separated into two categories: learning approach orientation and learning avoid orientation. However, this conceptualization is neither widely accepted nor substantially proven. According to Van Waal, Cron and Slocum, APGO and PPGO have differing relationships with various outcome variables, supporting the argument that a three-factor model should be used in place of the originally conceptualized two-factor model. State versus trait. There has been great debate if goal orientation should be operationalized as a state or as a trait. Throughout the goal orientation literature, there are inconsistencies with regard to the conceptualization of the stability of the construct. For example, Dishon and Gillespie stated that in the literature, goal orientation has been conceptualized as a trait, quasi-trait, and state. They articulated that whether researchers conceptualize goal orientation as a trait or a state depends on the breadth of the inference that the researcher is attempting to support. State goal orientation refers to the goal one has in a particular situation. It is similar to trait goal orientation in that it represents one's preference in an achievement situation. However, state goal orientation is specific to the task and context at hand. For example, Van Waal, Cron and Slocum stated that goal orientation can be domain-specific. They stated that it is possible for an individual to have a strong learning goal orientation in their academic domain but not in their work domain. Trait goal orientation refers to the consistent pattern of responses in achievement situations based on the individual's standing on goal orientation dimensions. This view of goal orientation treats the construct as a stable, individual difference characteristic. Button, Matthew, and Zajac take an integrative view of the construct, stating that goal orientation is best categorized as a relatively stable individual difference variable that can be influenced by situational and contextual characteristics. These authors found that when few situational cues are present, individuals will adopt their dispositional goal orientations. However, when dispositional goal orientations predispose individuals to adopt particular response patterns across situations, situational characteristics may cause them to adopt a different or less acute response pattern for a specific situation. Thus, trait and state goal orientation interact, so both operationalizations should be considered simultaneously. Types. Since the realization that performance goal orientation is best split into two separate parts, researchers have conducted validation studies to demonstrate the statistical and conceptual distinction of these three dimensions to goal orientation. Conceptual and empirical work by Elliott and Church and Van Waal demonstrated that the factor structure of goal orientation does indeed lend itself to three distinct dimensions, as summarized below. An explanation of the learning approach and learning avoidance goal orientations are also included for completeness. Communications. In communications, there is a theory that coincides with this overall concept. The theory is titled, The Theory of Goal-Oriented Communications. The idea behind it is that when communicating, if individuals are concentrated on the goal at hand rather than the communication itself, it will lessen confusion. Communication is not the goal in itself but something bigger, getting a planned idea across. Learning. Van Waal defines learning goal orientation as the desire to develop the self by acquiring new skills, mastering new situations and improving one's competence. Persons with learning goal orientation seek feedback on past performance to evaluate current performance. These individuals focus on improving skills and acquiring knowledge, and are less concerned with making mistakes. Research shows that adoption of mastery goals leads to greater intrinsic motivation as opposed to performance approach or performance avoid, which are associated with external motivation. One area where this can be seen as important is in the area of curriculum design. When designing learning environments for students, it is important to create opportunities that promote learning goals as opposed to performance goals. One possible implication for educators is the need to emphasize knowledge-centered classroom environments that encourage doing with understanding, learning approach and learning avoidance. Although learning goal orientation is most commonly conceptualized as a single construct, researchers have begun to make the approach and avoidance distinction that they have previously done with the performance goal orientation. According to Elliott, learning approach goals entail striving to develop one's skills and abilities, advance one's learning, understand material, or complete or master a task. This type of learning goal orientation is consistent with the way general learning goal orientation has been conceptualized previously. Alternatively, learning avoidance goals entail striving to avoid losing one's skills and abilities, forgetting what one has learned, misunderstanding material, or leaving a task incomplete or unmastered. Individuals are likely to pursue learning avoidance goals when they feel that their skills or abilities are deteriorating. For example, an elderly individual may notice that his/her physical and mental capacity is declining, and as a result may focus his/her goals on sustaining or improving these diminishing capacities. Prove performance. Van Wall defines performance-proof goal orientation as the desire to prove one's competence and to gain favorable judgments about it. The performance approach orientation represents a desire to achieve a high level of performance. Persons with performance approach orientation seek positive reinforcement and feedback. These individuals don't want to put forth a lot of effort unless they will be positively evaluated, and tend to avoid tasks where they may make mistakes and therefore be poorly evaluated. Avoid performance. Finally, Van Wall defines avoid performance as the desire to avoid the disproving of one's competence and to avoid negative judgments about it. The performance avoid orientation represents a desire to avoid instances of low beliefs. Persons with performance avoid orientation focus on avoiding situations in which they will receive evaluations or risk demonstrating lack of confidence. Individuals high in fear of failure are more likely to adopt performance avoid goals. Antecedents. Throughout the goal orientation literature, many studies have examined relationships between goal orientation and various antecedents. These antecedents have been identified as having varying levels of importance. In a meta-analysis by Payne and her colleagues, both need for achievement in the Big Five personality traits were identified as important antecedents of goal orientation, while cognitive ability was found to have almost no relationship with goal orientation. The following sections go into more detail about each antecedent. Payne and her colleagues did not distinguish between proximal and distal antecedents. Cognitive ability research has produced mixed results when examining the relationship between cognitive ability and goal orientation. For example, Eisen found that learning-oriented students had higher levels of cognitive ability than grade-oriented students. However, Dweck and her colleagues were unable to find any relationship between the constructs. Although findings are mixed, a substantial body of theory and research suggests motivational and ability traits are generally uncorrelated. In a meta-analysis by Payne and her colleagues, cognitive ability and goal orientation were found to be independent constructs. These authors also found that LGO predicted job performance above and beyond cognitive ability. Based on this research, goal orientation, rather than cognitive ability, serves as a useful tool for practitioners to use to predict job performance. Need for achievement. Need for achievement refers to the degree to which an individual maintains high standards and aspires to accomplish difficult tasks. Goal orientation dimensions have been conceptualized as manifestations of Atkinson's need for achievement and need to avoid failure. Competence relevant motives. In a meta-analysis by Payne et al., the authors found that need for achievement was positively correlated with LGO, negatively associated with APGO, and unrelated to PPGO. Another interesting finding by these authors was that need for achievement correlated more strongly with LGO than the trait conscientiousness. Although LGO and need for achievement were found to be strongly related, the findings demonstrate that LGO is related to, but not synonymous with, need for achievement. Big Five personality characteristics. Extensive research has been done on personality, and many researchers have agreed that personality is best conceptualized as a 5-factor model. These traits include extroversion, openness to experience, emotional stability, conscientiousness, and agreeableness. In a study by Zweig and Webster, the relationship between the Big Five personality traits and goal orientation was examined. The authors found that goal orientation and the Big Five personality traits are related yet distinct constructs. They also found that personality factors combine to create people's various orientations toward learning and goals, which in turn predict the types of tasks they will engage in. In a meta-analysis by Payne et al., goal orientation was found to predict job performance over and above the Big Five. Goal setting. Historically, goal-setting theory has primarily been concerned with performance goals. Locke and Latham summarized 25 years of goal-setting research by stating that as long as an individual is committed to a goal and has the ability to achieve it, specific, high goals lead to a higher level of task performance than vague or easy goals. However, the vast majority of goal-setting studies have been conducted with a specific performance goal, and often in laboratory settings where the task was fairly simple. It is possible that when tasks are more complex or require a long-term commitment, adopting a learning goal may lead to higher performance. Fan, Meng, Billings, Litchfield and Kaplan found that the relationship between trait learning, goal orientation and goal setting was moderated by self-efficacy, such that individuals high in learning goal orientation and self-efficacy set higher goal than those high in learning goal orientation but low in self-efficacy. This finding suggests that while learning goal orientation can have an impact on goal setting, the relationship also depends on other factors such as the individual's level of self-efficacy. Fan et al. Also found that learning improved goal orientations facilitated challenge striving, suggesting that either orientation can effectively facilitate motivation for goal attainment. Another factor to consider when examining the relationship between goal orientation and goal setting is the level of complexity inherent in the situation or task. In situations with more complex tasks, it appears that do your best goals may actually lead to higher performance than specific goals. It is possible that in complex tasks, a specific, difficult goal imposes greater cognitive demands on employees, making it difficult for them to learn the complex task due to this increased pressure. Canver and Ackerman found that in an air traffic controller simulation, having a performance outcome goal actually interfered with acquiring the knowledge necessary to perform the task. People performed better when they were asked to do their best. This suggests that adopting a learning orientation may be appropriate for complex tasks or in specific settings. However, it may be possible to set a specific, difficult learning goal. Latham and Brown found that when MBA students set specific, difficult learning goals such as mastering complex course material, they outperformed MBA students who set a performance goal for GPA. Locke and Latham claim that creating a specific, difficult learning goal in this type of situation facilitates metacognition, which is particularly helpful in complex environments with limited guidance, such as in an Embark program.